All right.
Quarantine.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's another fine episode of Quarantine Corner with Chris. Tonight, we are going to just talk beer. I have a special guest here tonight. That would be a good friend of mine, Tim George. He is a local brewer in the Detroit, Michigan area. And we're going to talk about some good beer. I myself have got a Brew Detroit favorite right here, the Cerveza del Rey. Cerveza del Rey. I've had a few already, maybe a couple, I don't know, Bloody Marys, 3 or 4 Captain Cokes. I'm doing pretty good. So we are going to start the evening just talking about a little bit of beer. Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do around here?
I brew beer anywhere from 2 barrel all the way up to 7 barrel.
7 barrel?
But we do monitor up to 200 barrels of beer in the process.
Better speak up so the camera can hear you, Tim. What are you, some kind of pussy?
Fuck up. I haven't drank any Bloody Marys today. So.
Ah, the son of a bitch. So I have had a couple questions. I did put this out a few days ago that I was going to have a guest brewer here tonight. And I did get a couple questions from fan base and audience members, etc., etc. And one of my first questions that I got from my audience members or my subscribers, commenters, whatever you have, was how do you know what is a good beer and what is a shitty beer?
That's subjective.
Subjective.
Shitty beer, I mean, if you taste notes of vinegar and skunk and all those nasty off flavors like dirty shoelaces, that's probably a bad beer.
Okay. Now, I think more what the viewer was getting to is, in your professional opinion,
right?
Obviously, we all know that Bud Light, Coors Light, Miller Light, they're not shitty beers if you were, but they're not good beers. So what really sets apart a good craft brew as opposed to a big brewery, big company label beer that they just brew and brew and brew?
So the hardest part about brewing is maintaining consistency.
Okay.
But your viewers aren't going to like this. When you have a Bud Light in Mexico, you have a Bud Light in Canada, you have a Bud Light in Jerusalem, right? It's going to taste the fucking same.
Right.
That's the hardest thing about brewing is consistency. So a lot of craft brewers will brew one-offs, like every week, a new beer. That's kind of easy to do. But when you have a flagship beer that you can brew consistently, that's going to be a good beer.
Okay. So you're not saying necessarily not Bud Light, Miller Light, Coors Light aren't necessarily bad beers because they can be brewed consistently.
Right.
And they have the same taste every time you open a beer.
Exactly. That to me, that's a good beer. But
okay.
Do I partake in Miller Light and Bud Light? Not usually, no.
All right.
But you got to respect them because that's where craft beer came from.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about where Budweiser actually came from? Because it did not start as a big label beer.
They're like a Brazilian-owned company now, aren't they?
They are a Brazilian-owned company.
Right. They own everybody.
They do, and this is something to keep in mind as well, is that, well, a lot of you will downplay and down-talk Budweiser and Miller and Corona and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're actually all owned by the same mega
yes.
corporate conglomerate, InBev.
Yeah, AB InBev, yeah,
yep,
that's right.
which brews some of the best beers in Europe. If you turn to Belgian beers, for example, not your traditional Belgiums, not your Lambics, but if you talk about Belgian beer like Hoegaarden's a good example, which is considered in Europe to be a pretty good beer. Hoegaarden is an InBev product.
That's right.
So, good beer is really, really subjective as far as what it actually is. Mm-hmm. Now, if we want to talk about craft beers, which is the scene, and in my opinion, craft beer is the better beer. I know you guys see me guzzling Bud Light every fucking night, but I do that because Bud Light is cheap to guzzle. I do enjoy a good, finer beer, or what I consider to be a finer beer, which is a lot of your local breweries, whether we're talking about Brew Detroit, or Griffin Claw, or Bell's, or Founders, or I mean, I could sit there and name them all day. This is Michigan. We have one of the strongest microbrew scenes in the country right now.
High 600s, I believe.
Yes, we got them everywhere. Good beer, it's out there, and to a lot of people, good beer has to do with the flavor profile. Whereas Bud Light, Miller Lite, etc., brew a very good, consistent beer. They don't brew beers with a strong flavor profile. You're not going to catch a lot of the subtle undertones like you do in the craft beers. And I think you would agree, Tim, that that's what makes the craft beer scene.
So that goes into expenses too. So they have this big budget. So these big brewers have a budget, and they go, well, we can't use those hops. Those are expensive. What do we have? Well, we got 3,000 pounds of Hallertau hops. So we're going to use those.
Okay. So
it goes back to profit, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, that's what it all comes down to with the big name labels. It's all about profit and bottom line. Whereas you get into the craft brew scene, and it's about the quality. These people, and Tim being one of these people, have a passion about what they brew and trying to create a new flavor and a new palate for you to taste when you're tasting one of these craft brew beers.
Right. So people always want something different. They go, what do you have now? What's new? No one wants to drink, at least in a craft brew setting, they want whatever's new. What happened last week doesn't matter, it's what's new. And that's what's challenging for a lot of craft brewers.
Yes.
No one wants to drink the same thing really twice. I mean, sure, you have your flagship beers, like 3 or 4, but every week you get new clientele coming in. What's new? Well, this tastes the same, or your last one. My favorite's your last one was better. You brew something and you go, oh, this one's better. This one's got more aroma, and they're like, oh, no, last one was better. And you're like, oh, fuck. So it's tough. It's definitely tough.
So another question I got from the fan base is, they requested that I ask you, well, where does a brewer get their start? So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about where you got your start in brewing and how it came to be that you are now a master brewer.
Where did I get my start? Oh my god. Well, I started in the automotive industry, so I was in corporate automotive stuff. And I eventually had enough of that mentality. And I have a mechanical background. I was a mechanic for many, many years, ASE certified, all that good stuff. And eventually you take the mechanic skills and I put them towards brewing, which is kind of like a mechanical plumber. So you're a plumber and a mechanic at the same time, and then an engineer, a little bit of engineering.
Right.
But yeah, I went to Ferris State, and then I went to actually Schoolcraft too, and went to the brewing program there.
And that's how you became.
I got my roots.
That's where you come from. Now, what about your brewing before you joined the program? You want to tell us a little about that?
So I homebrewed for about 10 years, right here, right by Chris, right around the neighborhood here.
Right around the block, per se.
So about 10 years under my belt homebrewing, all kinds of trial and error, probably, I don't know, 400-ish batches of homebrew, some competition, golds and silvers around the country, but I don't know, I just got bit by the homebrew bug and the constant change of something different, and it's never good enough. For beer, it's never good enough. I'm always improving it, it's always changing.
Right.
Definitely, It's definitely fun. I mean, you gotta have fun at work. And with brewing, it's usually pretty fun.
Yeah,
70%.
I would say
maybe
so.
80% of the time. But
I mean, for the fans out there, if I were to pursue brewing myself full time, I would probably end up the Peter Griffin, for those of you that are familiar with Family Guy, who would be quality control at a brewery.
right.
Because I can drink, my friends.
Yes. You do have to sample the product to make sure it's good.
Oh, and that's a big part of the brewing process. You can't be putting something out there that you wouldn't drink yourself.
That's correct. Very correct.
So now my question for you, Tim, is that what do you consider your greatest batch? What is your greatest accomplishment? And if you can't talk about it, that's fine. But what is your greatest accomplishment? What do you think your best batch of beer that you've ever made is? And how did you get there?
Personally, it was a red IPA that I brewed about 4 or 5 years ago, and I probably only brewed it 3 times. But it's all about the dry hop combination, fermentation, temperature control, just the basics, sanitation. And once you get it all down, make a good product. But yeah, you learn from your mistakes. And I brewed that red IPA probably 6 times until I got it down right. But what most people will tell you is, so I brewed like a pumpkin beer.
Okay.
Like in 2000
And all you fuckers that don't like pumpkin spice,
yeah, fuck off.
shove it. Fuck you.
I'm a basic bitch like a motherfucker. I like all that pumpkin shit. So, anyways,
Hell yeah.
2010, 11? I don't know, 11 or 12 or some shit like that. I brewed a pumpkin beer and, you know, actually roasted the pumpkin, like took the pumpkin apart, put it in the oven, put some brown sugar on it, and threw it in the mash of this beer. I've never even brewed an amber ale before, but I brewed this pumpkin beer. And everybody to this day, like 6 or 7 people I know are like, dude, when are you gonna brew that pumpkin beer again? I'm like, fucking never. Fucking never. Never brewing that pumpkin beer again. So that's what people think. My circle of friends go, man, that pumpkin beer is the shit. When are you doing that? And I'm like, well,
Never again.
no. Go buy Dogfish at the store. Or
Right,
something.
fuck off.
I'm not doing that.
Right. Alright, so now, just to take a quick segue, for all you motherfuckers that want to run your mouth about me and how I talk shit about how we're all got to do our part to keep safe,
Yeah, right
ladies
here.
and gentlemen, 6 feet center to center. Fuck off.
That's right.
We're watching.
Yeah.
We're doing the right thing.
COVID ain't got shit on this distance.
Nope. This distance is proper, and it is social distancing. So you can eat a dick.
Social distancing.
And as you've heard me mention before, this is our social distancing beers.
Yes.
This is what we do. We stay 6 feet apart. We still drink beer and have a good time. So
It's toasty in here tonight, too.
it is. It's warming up in here quickly. So I'm going to take a quick break because I know the camera is about out of its first 10 to 12 minutes.
Good.
And we will be back in just a moment.